I think the average college football fan can sometimes be a hypocrite, and I'm guilty of that as well. And the biggest point that I can make with that is that we often accuse coaches of never saying anything. All they do is just give coach speak that's just word salad, mumbo jumbo, corporate buzzwords that sound like they're saying something and they never do. And yesterday there were three coaches that did not adhere to that script, didn't stick to it. And I think the college football world's better for it. But the blowback has been pretty swift. And I think the Ryan Day, I'm not going to play it because you probably saw it, went super viral on Twitter. And they were split kind of like 60-40, I think. There were 60% of people that were like, this is awesome. This is exactly what Ryan Day has needed. And this is great. And then the 40% were like, he's arguing with an 86-year-old man. Well, okay. Yes and no. That 86-year-old man, and I had a great conversation with a very dear friend of mine who disagreed vehemently that Ryan Day basically made an ass out of himself. And I disagree. I think it's good for the sport. It's good for his program. And if somebody, there's not a more disrespectful thing you can call a football team, player, coach, program, whatever, than soft. Soft is worse than calling somebody a cheater, because that's questioning your manhood. That's questioning your integrity. That's basically implying that you are weak. And it just goes against everything that it stands for, to play the sport and be a man in that sport. Lou Holtz, and let me make this distinction. Lou Holtz called out Ryan Day professionally. There's been a lot of, this is turning personal. It was not personal. Saying Ryan Day is a bad man or a bad husband or something like that is personal. Lou Holtz criticized Ryan Day professionally. There is a difference between personal and professional. If Lou Holtz said Ryan Day's got a crappy beard, yes, that is a personal shot. Lou Holtz saying Ohio State loses because Ryan Day coaches soft teams is professional criticism. And I think it is important to define those two things. But it is undeniable that Lou Holtz criticized Ryan Day professionally more so than the players. And I know Ryan Day spent the majority of his post-game interview on the field with NBC and in the post-game press conference saying, people have questioned our players. I don't know that people question the players as much as people question you personally, professionally. And Ryan Day turned it into hey, people think you're soft, and used it for motivation for his team. I think there were some aspects of Lou Holtz's criticism that were fair and valid. Ohio State has lost to Clemson. They've lost to Georgia. They've lost to Michigan on the sport's biggest stages. That is absolutely 100% fact. Ohio State lost to Alabama in the national championship game. Ohio State lost to Alabama in the national championship game because Alabama was a significantly better team than they were. Ohio State lost to Clemson. Georgia doesn't leave that game last year in the college football playoff semifinals and think, man, them MFers were soft. It just doesn't. That's not true, and it's not the case. So Ryan Day defended himself from criticism. Now, the argument is that Lou Holtz is an 86-year-old man. Hell, he might have Alzheimer's and don't even know what he's saying. Yes, he does know what he's saying. Now, Lou Holtz is an ultimate Notre Dame homer, and that's okay. But he called out Ryan Day professionally with criticism that Ryan Day didn't feel was valid. So why, on one hand, is it okay for Lou Holtz to say whatever he'd like, but then it's not okay for Ryan Day to respond? That doesn't make any sense. The college football world is better today because Ryan Day had that reaction, because he didn't just meet with NBC after a thrilling 17-14 victory and go, yeah, we're really proud of our program. Guys really fought through some adversity there in the fourth quarter, and we came out with a win. All the respect to Notre Dame. It's a well-coached football team. It's a hell of a lot more interesting when he says, I want to know where Lou Holtz is right now. Because that's a normal person response. That is a normal thing for somebody who feels that they've been disrespected. That is the normal attitude to have. That's real life. And real life is a hell of a lot more interesting than the idea of like, he's got to be a CEO, even keel at all times. He can't ever show any emotion whatsoever. No, to hell with that. To hell with it. That game is more interesting, and college football is more interesting today because of the reaction that Ryan Day had. And for you to have any other reaction than, this is bleeping awesome, is ridiculous and hypocritical. But he's not the only one. The idea that Dan Lanning at Oregon, he made it personal with Deion. No, he didn't. All he did was motivate his team. And I hate to break it to anybody who took offense to that. That first of all, that's not the first time that somebody's talked that way about Colorado this college football season. I guarantee you, that's just the first time you've seen it. And kudos to Dan Lanning for not being afraid to let the cameras in the locker room to showcase hey, I'm going to run this guy down, because they want to play with pomp and circumstance and flash, and the game's not going to be played on Hollywood. It's going to be played on this grass. And you know what? They backed it up. Nobody cares about how much trash talking, how arrogant, how much hubris you have if you can back it up. And Oregon backed it up pretty strongly. And the idea that somehow, could Deion Sanders take that as disrespectful? Sure. Certainly. But it's not personal. Deion Sanders has said things about other programs, other players, other coaches to fire his guys up, and it was okay. And going back to Deion Sanders, Ryan Day is now guilty of doing the same thing that Deion Sanders has been hyped up for the last month. All Deion Sanders has done is called out members of the media, talked about how anything that any slight anybody has used against them, well, that's disrespectful. They made it personal now. No, they didn't. But he used that for motivation for his players. And if Ryan Day wants to tell his players, the national perception of you guys is that you're soft and you're not physical. One, he's telling the truth. That is the national perception of Ohio State. And frankly, I don't know that they've got a whole lot to hang their hat on, except for they won and Notre Dame lost. Because Ohio State wasn't overly physical in that game. They didn't run the ground and pound. They were one Notre Dame play away where they had 10 guys on the field away from the perception being you failed on short yardage, and on 4th and 1 on the game's most pivotal play, you handed the ball off to a wide receiver. And the game-winning play is scored when 3 guys were blocking 2 because there wasn't a defensive lineman where he was supposed to be, and the running back still barely got into the end zone. So I don't know that Ohio State did much to dispel the notion that they're not physical and that they're soft, other than win the football game. Now, that's the most important thing, is to go on the road against a really tough opponent and win. And that matters. But it wasn't some feat of physicality that won them the game. If anything, it was Notre Dame's ineptitude down the stretch that won them the game. Now, there are positives for Ohio State on a final drive. Kyle McCord, there was talk of he's going to get a lot of confidence from this. I think he showed he's got a lot of confidence. But Ryan Day and Ohio State didn't dispel this notion that they're not physical enough. That was a dress rehearsal for a game against Michigan in 2 months. But I'm guessing when they go back and watch the film, doesn't instill them with a ton of faith that they're going to handle another really great offensive line and better, just as good, maybe better running back stable from Michigan. This is the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. I'm Garrett Searight. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Certainly appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. Also, If you are listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. We'll read them here on the show. But Ryan Day wasn't the only coach that got honked off. The story of this Saturday was honked off coaches, was angry guys. Ryan Day, upset, fiery and passionate. Dan Lanning at Oregon, fiery and passionate. Jake Dickert at Washington State, fiery and passionate. And he has as big of a point as anybody where, and I know that the idea that you're arguing with these old guys, it's open season on geriatrics. Lou Holtz's opinion, Lou Holtz is a legend in the sport. His opinion on what a coach is or isn't doing still holds weight and will until the day he dies. Whether he realizes that or not, I don't know, but it does. You can pretend that it doesn't, but it does. And so for Ryan Day to respond, I don't think is outrageous or unwarranted. He felt personally disrespected. Now, I think he was professionally disrespected. But disrespect is disrespect. If somebody disrespects you, how likely are you to go, you know what? That's just their opinion. And they're entitled to it. Not likely. Not likely at all. So stop pretending as if it's some horrible thing that Ryan Day did that. Dan Lanning and, frankly, Oregon has built their brand and gotten their publicity, notoriety from being the flashy school. And Colorado took that away. So you got to take it back. But you also got to take it back on the football field. And they did that. Washington State might have the biggest gripe of the day where Lee Corso, God love the man, called the game between Washington State and Oregon State the nobody's watching bowl. And I don't think it was as much because it's Oregon State and Washington State as much as it's that game's going to happen while Ohio State's playing Michigan, or while Ohio State's playing Notre Dame, I beg your pardon. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on Ohio State, Notre Dame, and not Oregon State, Washington. It still was a really fun game. It was an exciting back and forth, awesome Pac-12 game that somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. And Washington State got a big win. It's a big deal. It just so happened that it took place during the second or third biggest game of the college football season so far this year. And that's not their fault. It's just, are the eyeballs going to be on number 14 versus number 21? Or are they going to be on number 6 versus number 9? And number 6 versus number 9 are two of the storied programs in college football history. And number 14 versus number 21 is the two schools who got left, the two schools that now run the zombified corpse of the Pac-12. Is it disrespectful? Yeah, it is. It is. It's undeniably disrespectful, but it's also the truth. The television figures of Oregon State, Washington State will pale in comparison to Ohio State, Notre Dame. It's just the truth. But Jake Dickert had reason to be angry, had reason to be feel disrespected because Washington State has spent the majority of the last 3 months being disrespected. They saw their conference disintegrate in front of their eyes, and they and Oregon State are the ones left holding the bag. So they're already going to have a chip on their shoulder. And then somebody that works for the network that, frankly, killed their conference, worked in conjunction with Fox Sports to kill their conference. Somebody on that network then says, well, nobody's going to watch it anyway. You're right. You should feel disrespected. And similarly to Lou Holtz, Lee Corso is a little old man on TV just saying what he believes. But like Lou Holtz, Lee Corso's opinion matters. It holds weight because there is not a coach in America who doesn't want to be respected by Lou Holtz and Lee Corso. That's just the reality of the situation. Whether you believe or trust or put a lot of stock in anything those guys say, Lou Holtz is a legend in the college football coaching profession, and Lee Corso is a legend in the college football media world. You want to have the respect of those guys. And when they say things that come across as disrespectful, the idea that these coaches are then in turn supposed to go like, oh, that's just your opinion, and that's fine. You're entitled to that. Real people don't react that way. And so to see Jake Dickert and Dan Lanning and Ryan Day react like real people is refreshing and should be encouraged, because you can't believe that these college football coaches are boring. Nobody ever says anything. All they ever do is give their coach speak, and it's stupid, and I hate it. And then the second somebody goes off script, you think, well, that's kind of tacky. That's classless. It can't be both. It cannot be both. I'm somebody who believes that in a lot of situations, in most situations, that sometimes it can be both. In this situation, it cannot. It cannot be that these guys are boring and shallow, and all they're doing is talking to the media because they have to. And then the second somebody tells you how they really feel or lets you in to see how things really go in the locker room before a really big game, your immediate reaction then can't be, well, that's personal, that's disrespectful, you're classless. It can't be both. So I encourage you to get on the side of, this is awesome. And you know why? Because it's awesome. College football is better for it. Do I think we'll ever see Ryan Day do that again? Probably not. Unless Jim Harbaugh keeps talking about him and they put a whooping on Michigan, I don't think you'll see that from him. You might see that some more from Dan Lanning. You might see that some more from Jake Dickert. I hope you see it some more from everybody. I like seeing Nick Saban open up a little bit. I like Lane Kiffin saying that it looks like Alabama's got a new defensive coordinator and they're not telling you, or planting the seed that, he really appreciates competing against Nick Saban, because that might have been the last time. The sport is better for it. And I hope that you can come around to join me on this side of the fence. That'll do it for today's edition of the Daily Huddle. Got another big Saturday of college football coming up. Looking forward to chatting all week with you about it here on Saturday Glory in the Daily Huddle. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Really helps the channel. If you're listening on the podcast, give a 5-star review. That's how you can help as well. We'll catch you next time here on the Daily Huddle.